certainly not a pleasure. I had to manage my way through the deepest recession since the Great Depression when I was mayor in my first term. And I think you have to make some difficult decisions. I made a decision very early on that clearly we didn't want to balance the books of the government by unbalancing the books of families and businesses. And so we had to make cuts. And we made cuts in almost every department, some as much as 15%. And that was difficult to do. But at the same time, I had run on a campaign where I was very supportive of public education, public safety, and economic development. Those were the things that I thought would move the city forward, and I didn't want to back away from those. So those were areas that we protected. We weren't able to do everything that we wanted to do by any means, but we were able to preserve their funding and actually get the police department up to full staffing, and then be very vigorous about economic development. I think one of the things we have to do as a state is be very conscious of the fact that we are very much sales tax dependent, and there will be another recession. The business cycle hasn't been repealed, and we need to prepare for it. We need to put money away in the rainy day reserve so that we'll be able to withstand it for more than we're able to right now. I think we're at about 26 days right now. But putting money aside when times are good is a good practice.
Mr. Lee?
Yes, just by way of introduction, I'm Bill Lee. I am a third-generation cattle farmer. I'm a businessman who employs 1,200 mostly skilled tradespeople. And I'm a man who, in part because of a tragedy in my life that God used in a real powerful way to change my perspective, a man who knows that the highest call for my life is to serve others. That's why I'm running. And I think as governor, one of the most important jobs that I would have is to manage the budget. I run a company that's got about a $250 million revenue budget. And we certainly have been in times of prosperity, and we've been in times of difficulty. And in business, if you don't manage a budget, you go bankrupt. And in business, in government, if you don't manage a budget, you raise taxes, and that's not a good idea. And so what we do have to do is look at how it is that we can run the most efficient government. I'm also a conservative who believes that expanding government beyond an appropriate growth associated with population growth and inflation is a really bad idea. So we have to look at every aspect of our government and our government budget in order to manage that. And we don't do that specifically with one plan. We look at multiple ways. I went through a really difficult time in our business at one point where we had to cut a budget from $100 million to $67 million. In part because I had left my business for a couple years after my wife passed away. When I came back, we were in deep trouble. Had to make really deep decisions and make significant cuts in that budget.
Sorry, Mr. Lee, you out of time.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that. I wasn't
apologize.
watching the time.
We'll figure out a system.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Fitzhugh, your turn.
Thank you. This governor, the current governor, was the only governor in the past three I know that wasn't faced with a recession. So the odds are the next governor will be faced with a recession, and I've thought about that. Balancing the budget is a requirement that we have to do, and it's not hard to balance X's and pluses and minuses. The key is what you put inside that budget to balance, and it means our budget is one that what you cherish, what you think is most important, is what you'll fund. So I'll always remember that, and I think that education is the first thing, health is the second thing, and then economic and jobs are the third thing. So those would be the priorities. However, we are the lowest tax state from a perspective, the state and local perspective in the country. And when we do these cuts, these across-the-board cuts every year that the current governor's asked for, who gets hurt? Mostly mental health, mostly developmental disability folks, mostly those that don't have the ability to really speak for themselves. So we have to be really careful on that. We have limited means of raising revenue. Normally, our revenues will be raised every 7 or 8 years, and I got to talk faster, but we haven't raised any revenues since 2002, which is 16 years. I would look at things like the internet decision we just had to bring revenue into our state. I would look at other things like possibilities of the, and I'll come back to that later. Thank you. Sorry.
House, and I'm the person that has had to sign 8 budgets that are balanced for our state of Tennessee. And I'm proud of that. I served on the Finance Committee for many years. I understand when times are tough, how difficult it can be to manage that budget. We talk very carefully, about, we balance our budget. Well, I'll tell you, I've been there when we have taken non-reoccurring money and spent it on reoccurring expenses. I have been there when we have gone into deficit spending. I've been there when we have raided our rainy day fund. We have stopped doing that. I am proud of the fact that we are a balanced budget state. We have not raised taxes. I've been there during the difficult times. I've been there through the good times. And I will tell you, nothing more, it means more to me as the next governor of the state than balancing our budget every single year, not using any funny numbers, but actually doing it in a responsible manner. And that is what I'm committed to doing. It's often said if you want to know what someone truly values, you look at their budget. And when you look at the budget of Tennessee, the 2 items that we have increased money for every single year has been education and healthcare, because we care about those 2 issues. And so my goal when I was Speaker of the House was to limit the number of bills that are introduced, because bills turn into laws and laws turn into spending. And so when we limit the size of government, we are able to do what we are chosen to do efficiently and well and live within our means.
Each of you has voiced support for broadening online taxes on online sales from e-commerce, which the Supreme Court ruled last week states will now be able to do for most major internet sales, and could help the state capture as much as $450 million of additional money. In 2016, the state enacted a Revenue Department rule that sought to require out-of-state sellers with no physical presence to collect a tax on any retailer sales more than $500,000. Small businesses have raised the concern that this could be burdensome to go about taxing rates across the country at different rates. I wonder, as you move toward potentially broadening online sales taxes, would you move ahead with that? And what, if any, exemption would you give for small businesses? To the extent that you get more money, where would you spend that money? And I'll start with Mr. Dean.
Well, I certainly would look to move forward with taxing internet sales, because I believe, number 1, we need the revenue. Number 2, it's an issue of fairness. I mean, folks who operate businesses here are competing against people out of state who are selling to Tennessee and not paying taxes on it. And so it kind of levels the ground, which I think is the right thing to do. The exact details, obviously, you need to work with the legislature and go through a very thoughtful process. What would I do with it? My emphasis is going to be public education. I think that we need to be putting more money in public education. One of the things that we need to do in this state is pay our teachers more. I've traveled the state, and whether you're in Shelby County and you hear about STEM programs where they're afraid of losing teachers because of the private sector, whether you're in a rural county where you hear about the lack of a sales tax base there at all, or the ability to garner more revenue from property taxes, and they lose teachers to districts within Tennessee. And then you know that Kentucky and Georgia pay their teachers more, and we lose teachers there. So that would be a primary goal of mine. I think that by investing in education, we're going to move our state forward more than any other way. We're going to see an increase in jobs, we're going to see better jobs, and as a result of that, we'll see revenue grow.
Mr. Lee, would you favor an online sales tax? Would there be any exemption, and how would you spend the money?
I think that it's important, as governor of Tennessee, that it's important that we look at protecting the businesses in this state, making certain that the tax structure is fair all across the board. And when we have businesses in Tennessee that their bricks and mortar are here, and they're doing business here, and they're selling products to the citizens of this state, and they're having to compete with a company from out of state that's doing online sales that isn't having to compete on the same level, it's not fair to our businesses. So we need to be certain that we do that, and that we have a fair taxation schedule for all businesses. To the broader question of business taxes in this state, we are a low tax state, but we're not really a low business tax state. Our franchise and excise taxes in Tennessee are not competitive with the adjacent states around us. In fact, we have companies in parts of our state, Memphis, for example, who are enticed and sometimes will move across the border into Mississippi because their franchise and excise tax, their business taxes, and their environment there is better from a tax standpoint. We have to change that. We have to correct that so that we can have businesses flourish in this state. I do believe that investing a business created in Tennessee is significantly better than one brought here. And so we need to invest in our small businesses.
Representative Fitzhugh, would you favor an online tax more? Consumers have to pay more with that?
I favor it, and here's why. I've been for what we used to call the streamlined sales tax for many years, and I'm certainly glad to see this court decision, which, remember now, folks, just remember, these aren't new taxes. These are taxes that people are supposed to pay, but don't because there haven't been means to collect them. So it will help all of us as taxpayers when we have that fairness. Concerning the small businesses in Tennessee, it will actually help them too, because it will level that playing field by requiring those folks to buy online to pay that tax, and it may allow those folks to walk down the street and buy it from a mom and pop, or new moms and pops come together. I think that we're gonna have more than $400 million, frankly, from what we look at. It may take it a while to grow, but I think it's something that we can use to pay our teachers better, and based on what we feel like in the budget is the most important thing we do. We have an opportunity here that will guard against a recession, as I was speaking about before, and I think I really think this is for us having limited taxing ability now, and a sales tax that's the highest in the country. I think this is good news.
Speaker Howard?
Well, I think it is also, I will agree, it's good news, because I think it's an opportunity for us to do something that I've wanted to do for some time now, which is lower our sales tax. So the obvious answer is, it's a question of fairness. I have to tell you that I have 3 20-year-olds in my household, and those 20-year-olds, my children, they never go to a mall. They buy everything online, even their school clothes. So the time for us is now to understand that we need to collect our taxes on online sales. That is what is fair to our mom and pop stores all across our wonderful state. They are citizens that have been paying their property tax, are good community leaders and participants, and we don't need to treat them unfairly. I actually myself went and looked at a washing machine the other weekend. I needed to replace it, and the man said to me at A1 Appliances in Nashville, "Are you gonna come look here and then go buy it online after I tell you what's the best product to buy?" And I thought, he has a very good point. So we do need to capture that money. We need that money, but I would do it in a sense that it would be revenue neutral for you as taxpayers. I would look to South Dakota, who's leading the way on this. What they have said is we don't want to forfeit innovation, and a lot of young companies are started on the internet. We want to make sure that those companies that are $200,000 or less of sales in our state would not be subject to this, to encourage them to grow and prosper, because the future is really online.
Mr. Boyd?
I'd say it's not only fair but essential. So as sales are moving more and more to the internet, and sales tax is such an important part of our revenue, if we didn't do this, we're going to be in trouble. So it's important that this ruling happened. I'm excited about that opportunity for us to explore it. I also think it's a sense of fairness. And I know small businesses all across the state of Tennessee, especially in our small towns that are dying and being able to give up, and they can't compete fairly. So we need to be able to let our small businesses in our downtowns all across our state compete. So I think this is also a sense of fairness. I think I would look at both, potentially, this is going to be up to the legislature, but having a discussion about what things we could invest in and what ways in which we could reduce taxes. So as Mr. Lee pointed out, we have the highest business taxes in the Southeast. When I was the Commissioner of Economic and Community Development, we had a goal of being #1 in the Southeast for high quality jobs. When I left, we were #4. Our biggest headwind was our F&E taxes. So Tennessee has 6.5% F&E taxes, which really hits our small business. That's the highest of the 12 states that we have to compete with. So I want to look to try to also help our small businesses by reducing that tax. I'd also like to look at and have a conversation with the legislature about encouraging better health by maybe lowering some of our taxes on healthier foods at our grocery stores as well. If we have the opportunity to invest, the 2 big areas I'd like to invest, one would be in education. There's so much that we need to do there. And the second thing, I'd like to look at for a one-time non-recurring fee or amount to tackle the opioid crisis. I think if we could put one non-recurring fund initially, I think we could go a long ways to ending this crisis immediately.
This is a question about immigration, which obviously is a national debate, in part, something that the governor wouldn't have a direct influence on. But there has been a debate in Tennessee, started by Senator Todd Gardenhire of Chattanooga, who attempted a couple of times to get passed in-state tuition for immigrants who were brought here by their parents who were born and